Imagine staring at like a jagged white line on an X-ray.
Right, where the break is just glaringly obvious.
Yeah, exactly. Your brain is entirely hardwired to trust that visual evidence. The doctor points to the break, you see the break, and the reality of the situation is just completely confirmed by your senses.
Would you go and question it?
No, of course not. We crave that binary simplicity, you know? We build our entire societal architecture around this idea that if we can observe a phenomenon and catalog the physical evidence and construct a logical sequence of events, then we have arrived at the truth.
Right.
But when you apply that exact same sensory logic to the landscape of human morality, well, the machine just breaks down.
It shatters completely. Because human epistemology.
The mechanics of how we know what we know.
Exactly. The actual mechanics of how we gather knowledge is inherently flawed when it relies strictly on the material world. We are dealing with essentially an existential bug in human hardware.
Which brings us to the mission for this deep dive. You are sitting down with us today to unpack a really fascinating stack of material centered on Leo Tolstoy's profound short story, God Sees the Truth, But Waits.
Such an incredible piece of literature.
It really is. And, you know, assuming you are already familiar with the broad strokes of the narrative.
Merchant framed for murder.
Right, the decades in Siberia, the chance encounter with the actual killer. We're going to bypass the basic summary today.
Yeah, we're diving much deeper.
Exactly. Our goal is a rigorous philosophical analysis. So we are pulling from the original text an intricate Arabic translation that reframes the linguistic concepts of fate, and a 1950s radio dramatization from the show Favorite Story.
Starring Eddie Dowling.
Yeah, starring Eddie Dowling and hosted by Ronald Colman, which adds this incredible layer of auditory interpretation to the psychology of the characters.
The intention here is to use Tolstoy's narrative not just as a simple fable, but as a controlled philosophical laboratory.
I love that framing.
Right. We are looking at the collision point between flawed human justice and absolute divine truth. We're looking at the precise utility of suffering and, honestly, the excruciating active mechanics of forgiveness.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the inciting incident, but look at it through the lens of determinism. So, we're in the town of Vladimir. Ivan Dmitrich Aksionov is preparing to leave for the Nizhny Fair.
He's young, handsome, fair-haired.
Curly-headed, successful merchant. He owns 2 shops and a house. He's full of fun, fond of singing, and used to be a heavy drinker before he got married.
A very earthly, grounded guy.
Very much so. But as he's leaving, his wife, who is named Anya or Anna in the radio play, she begs him not to go.
Because of the dream.
Right, the dream. She had a bad dream where he returned, took off his cap, and his hair was completely white. And Aksionov just laughs it off as a lucky sign. He says he'll sell all his goods and bring her presents.
He entirely focused on the profit.
Yeah, exactly. Now, the modern cynical instinct is to read that dream as, like, a cheap, melodramatic plot device. It feels like a neon sign blinking, you know, tragedy ahead. It's like ignoring a check engine light because you're in a hurry to get to a party.
Right, it feels a bit heavy-handed to a modern reader.
Yeah. I mean, isn't the wife's dream just a cheap way to build suspense?
Viewing it merely as foreshadowing drastically underestimates what Tolstoy is establishing here.
Okay, how so?
That dream is the foundational anchor of the story's central debate. It's the illusion of human control versus cosmic determinism.
Okay.
Aksionov represents the absolute pinnacle of earthly agency at that moment. He is a successful merchant. He owns properties. He has a travel itinerary.
And in the radio play, he is actively calculating like a 20,000 ruble profit.
Exactly. He believes his inputs will guarantee predictable outputs. He thinks he's the master of his destiny.
He believes he is the architect of his reality.
Precisely. The dream introduces a reality that already exists entirely outside of his temporal control. And the Arabic translation of the text actually handles this beautifully.
Oh, I wanted to get into this.
Yeah, it's fascinating. When we look at the word used for the truth in the title, you know, God Sees the Truth, the Arabic translators frequently use a derivative of al-haq.
Which carries a much heavier ontological weight than just, you know, factual accuracy.
Right, it implies the absolute or the ultimate reality. It's not just that God knows the trivia of who actually held the knife.
Right.
It means there is an immovable, supreme reality that supersedes human timelines.
Wow.
Similarly, the concept of his fate in the dream aligns with the Arabic concept of maktub.
Meaning, it is written.
Exactly. So the whitening of his hair isn't just a premonition of some sudden accident. It is a very specific manifestation of time.
Because it takes decades for hair to turn snow white.
Right. The dream proves that the decades of waiting are already factored into the universe's calculus. It completely nullifies Aksionov's spreadsheets and his profit margins.
Man, the discrepancy between what he thinks he is managing and what is actually happening is terrifying.
It's pure dramatic irony, but on a cosmic scale.
Yeah. He is worried about getting a good price for his goods while the universe is literally preparing to annihilate his entire identity.
Stripping him down to nothing.
So he drives away. He meets a fellow merchant. They stay at an inn in adjoining rooms. Aksionov leaves early before dawn to beat the heat.
A very logical merchant thing to do.
Right. He stops 25 miles later to feed his horses, orders a samovar, gets out his guitar, or fiddle, depending on the version, and just plays.
The radio play uses this brilliant, bright musical motif here.
Yeah, he is literally composing a melody out of his head, drinking warm tea perfectly synchronized with his environment.
The absolute zenith of his earthly contentment.
And then the troika arrives with its tinkling bells.
The authorities.
A police officer and 2 soldiers cross-examine him. The merchant he stayed near has been found with his throat cut. They search Aksionov's bags and boom, they find a blood-stained knife.
The ultimate damning evidence.
Right. And Aksionov has only 8,000 rubles of his own, but the victim was robbed of 20,000. Aksionov stammers, his face goes pale, he trembles, and he is arrested.
The trap snaps shut.
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. I want to stop right here and look at the mechanics of this arrest, because I feel like I have to defend the authorities here.
Really? Defend the people framing an innocent man.
Well, not framing, but arresting. If we strip away the dramatic irony, the fact that we, the audience, know he is innocent from a purely logical standpoint, didn't the human justice system function perfectly?
You were arguing that the epistemological process of the police was flawless.
Unquestionably. I mean, think about it. They established motive.
Well,
He's a merchant seeking capital.
Yeah.
Opportunity, he was in the adjoining room.
True.
Circumstantial behavior.
Yeah.
He slipped out before dawn. Physical evidence, the literal murder weapon, covered in blood, is inside his personal luggage.
It looks bad.
It looks terrible. Furthermore, his biological reaction screams guilt. He stammers and physically shakes. The human justice system relies on pattern recognition. The police saw a pattern that mathematically equaled murder. We cannot fault the X-ray machine for showing a break when the bone looks broken. How can we blame human justice here?
That is the exact philosophical trap Tolstoy wants you to walk into.
Really?
Absolutely. Tolstoy isn't writing a critique of corrupt police or malicious prosecutors. He is writing a critique of human perception itself.
Okay, unpack that.
The human justice system operates on the arrogant assumption that sensory data is sufficient to construct al-haq, the ultimate truth. But sensory data is violently incomplete.
Because it cannot account for the invisible variables.
Exactly. Think about the audio engineering in the radio play during this specific scene.
Oh, Ronald Colman's narration.
Yes. The narration emphasizes the harsh, clipping tones of the police officer. The officer treats Aksionov's physical trembling as the final, irrefutable proof.
Right, the officer says something like, "It would be obvious to a mere child how guilty you are."
Yes. The human mind demands a closed loop. The police found the pieces, they forced them into a puzzle that vaguely resembled the event, and they called it justice.
Because it's tidy.
Right.
Yeah.
The idea of Makar Semyonich sliding into the room, cutting the throat, and hiding the knife in a sleeping man's bag is an anomaly that human logic rejects. It sounds too improbable.
Right. Human logic defaults to the path of least resistance. It is so much easier to believe the man with the bloody knife is the killer than to imagine a phantom third party orchestrating this bizarre frame-up.
It's Occam's razor applied incorrectly.
Exactly. And the terrifying takeaway for you, the listener, is that a perfectly functioning logical system can produce an absolute moral atrocity.
And that realization is exactly what breaks Aksionov.
It's not the arrest itself.
No, the turning point isn't the arrest or the trial. It's the visit from his wife.
Oh, this scene is brutal.
It really is. When she visits him in prison with their children, including a baby still at her breast, she mentions her unanswered petitions to the Tsar.
She's tried everything.
Right. But then, passing her fingers through his hair, she asks, "Vanya, dearest, tell your wife the truth. Was it not you who did it?"
The ultimate betrayal.
Because she possesses the deepest possible human knowledge of him. She knows his soul, his history, his character.
They're married. If anyone knows he's incapable of murder, it should be her.
Precisely. If the person with the most intimate empirical data regarding his nature looks at the circumstantial evidence and chooses to believe the evidence over the man, then human perception is entirely bankrupt.
Wow. Yeah, Aksionov says, so you too suspect me.
The final tether is severed.
The text notes that he realizes only God can know the truth, and he stops writing petitions. He gives up all hope in earthly institutions. But let's scrutinize that for a second.
Right.
Is this a moment of profound spiritual clarity, or is it just the psychological collapse of a man who has been utterly defeated? Because it looks like surrender.
It looks like surrender, but philosophically, it is the prerequisite for spiritual clarity.
How so?
He is entering a state of absolute existential isolation. By abandoning the petitions to the Tsar, he is officially withdrawing his participation in the earthly justice system.
He stops playing the game.
Right. To use a Plato analogy, he stops asking the shadows on the cave wall to explain the sun. He is completely cut off from the material world now.
So he accepts his fate, he is flogged with a knout and marched to the Siberian mines.
The crucible of Siberia.
Yeah, and for 26 years he lives as a convict. The physical transformation matches that premonition dream perfectly. His hair turns white as snow, his beard grows long, thin, and gray.
All mirth is gone.
Completely gone. He stoops, he walks slowly, he never laughs. But the psychological and behavioral shift is where we really need to dig in.
A metamorphosis.
Right. He learns to make boots, he earns a little money, and he buys a book called The Lives of the Saints.
A very intentional choice of reading material.
Yeah, and he reads lessons in the prison church, he sings in the choir. The prisoners respect him immensely. They call him grandfather and the saint.
They use him as their spokesman.
And as the judge for their quarrels. Now, you brought this up earlier, comparing him to an ascetic monk rather than a hardened criminal. You said he didn't become a monster in the dark. It's like he was put into a crucible and all his worldly desires were burned away until only this pure, stoic core remained.
Yes, the human justice system intended to break him, but philosophically, it inadvertently facilitated his spiritual elevation. He transforms a place of punishment into a monastery.
Okay, but I need to push back aggressively on this interpretation of his sainthood.
All right, let's hear it.
You are reading this as a theological victory, right? A manifestation of ascetic purification.
I am.
I am looking at a man whose psyche has been pulverized by the state. From a modern psychological perspective, couldn't we argue this isn't spiritual ascendance at all? This looks like textbook institutionalization.
You think it's just a survival mechanism?
Yeah. He has adapted his personality to survive an environment of extreme trauma. He's meek because rebellion in a Siberian labor camp gets you killed. He mediates quarrels because he desperately needs a safe, predictable environment. Isn't labeling him the saint just romanticizing a deeply broken man?
That is a phenomenal counter-argument. It really is. And it forces us to differentiate between psychological defeat and active theological kenosis.
Kenosis?
Yes, the deliberate emptying of the ego. If he were merely institutionalized, as you suggest, his behavior would be purely defensive.
Which it might be.
But if it were, he would just be a hollow shell reacting to stimuli.
Yeah.
Tolstoy specifically imbues him with agency within his confinement.
Wait, where is the agency in just reading a book and keeping your head down for 26 years?
It's in the choice of interpretation. To understand this, we must look at a profound detail from the radio play source.
Okay.
The introduction quotes Dostoevsky saying, "Love all God's creation. Love every leaf, every ray of light. If you love everything, you will begin to see the divine mystery in things."
That's a beautiful quote.
It perfectly captures Aksionov's metamorphosis. Dostoevsky and Tolstoy both grappled heavily with the philosophy of redemptive suffering. Aksionov doesn't just endure his 26 years, he actively reframes them.
How so?
Well, when other prisoners ask about his past, he doesn't say he was framed. He says, "For my sins, I have been imprisoned these 26 years.
He claims ownership of the suffering, even though he didn't commit the specific crime he's there for.
Exactly. He is utilizing the suffering. In Russian Orthodox thought, the innocent suffering of the individual mirrors the passion of Christ. Aksionov shifts his perspective from, "I'm a victim of an unjust state," to, "I am a flawed mortal utilizing this crucible to burn away my earthly attachments."
Oh, wow.
If he were merely broken, he would harbor a simmering, passive resentment. Instead, he achieves a functional grace that radiates outward, affecting the entire prison population. He becomes the moral arbiter in a place completely devoid of morality.
He turns the void into an instrument.
That's a great way to put it.
That distinction between passive victimhood and active asceticism is crucial. But, I mean, this delicate ecosystem he has built is highly volatile.
Extremely fragile.
And the laboratory experiment introduces the ultimate destabilizing agent, Makar Semyonich.
the physical embodiment of the unaddressed past,
Yeah.
the actual murderer.
Yeah. A fresh gang of convicts arrives, and Makar is among them. He's tall, strong, 60 years old, from Vladimir.
The same hometown.
Exactly. And Makar is incredibly arrogant. He claims he was arrested merely for taking a horse to get home quicker, though he casually admits he did something truly wrong in the past and wasn't caught.
He is the absolute antithesis of Aksionov.
Completely. And then Makar recognizes Aksionov's name. When he hears how Aksionov was framed with a knife in his bag, Makar slaps his knee and starts laughing.
He says, well, this is wonderful. But how old you've grown, Granddad.
It's so cool. Makar hints at his own guilt. He says, how could anyone put a knife into your bag while it was under your head? It would surely have woke you up.
Makar holds the missing puzzle piece that the police, the governor, and the Tsar never had. He holds the mechanical truth of the event, and he dangles it with casual cruelty.
And in the radio play, Eddie Dowling's performance here is just agonizing. Makar doesn't just hint at the murder, he brutally informs Aksionov that his wife, Anya, has been dead for 6 years.
It's a deliberate, calculated infliction of trauma to establish dominance in the prison hierarchy.
And what is the immediate result? The saint collapses, the ascetic monk vanishes.
The internal storm begins.
Aksionov lies awake all night, and the text describes this terrifying flood of memories. He vividly sees his young wife, his little children, his former self playing the guitar. He remembers the executioner, the flogging, his premature old age.
The trauma comes flooding back.
He becomes intensely vengeful. He becomes suicidal. He longs to kill Makar, even if he perishes for it himself.
The anger is absolute.
Now, this is where the philosophy of the story gets incredibly uncomfortable for me.
Why is that?
Because the narrative frames this anger as a failure, or like a dangerous regression. But hasn't he earned this fury?
You think his anger is justified?
Of course. Wait, what happened to the saint? Why doesn't he just turn Makar in immediately or attack him? Isn't 26 years of false imprisonment enough to justify a little righteous fury? From the standpoint of any rational framework of justice, wanting to destroy the man who stole 26 years of your life and marked your dead wife is not a spiritual failure. It is a profound moral obligation. It is the demand for equilibrium.
You are advocating for the mathematics of retribution.
An eye for an eye, yeah.
It feels logical, it feels satisfying, and it is entirely what you, the listener, are likely screaming for Aksionov to execute.
I certainly was.
But Tolstoy is pushing us to recognize that the mathematics of retribution is a trap. This is the crux of the philosophical test.
How is demanding justice a trap?
Because vengeance requires you to re-engage with the exact same flawed earthly machinery that destroyed you in the first place. Look at what happens to Aksionov internally before he even takes an action. The mere desire for vengeance acts as a localized poison.
Right, he's agonizing over it.
For 26 years, his suffering was abstract. The state was a faceless monolith. But now, the suffering has a specific face. The flood of memories isn't a beautiful nostalgia. It is the violent reattachment of his ego.
The memories drag him out of the spiritual realm and slam him back into the material one.
Yes.
Yeah.
The tragedy isn't just the 26 years he lost. It's that the resentment Makar brings up threatens to completely destroy the spiritual peace Aksionov spent decades building. He becomes wretched. He prays all night, but finds no peace.
He's losing his soul.
Exactly. Tolstoy is illustrating that the anger isn't hurting Makar, it is rapidly dismantling Aksionov's soul. The desire for vengeance is shown as a poison that harms the victim more than the perpetrator.
The fragility of enlightenment is terrifying. 26 years of meticulous ascetic discipline is nearly vaporized in a fortnight of raw human resentment.
Which proves the earlier point. His peace wasn't truly tested when he was just weaving boots and singing hymns in isolation.
Right.
True forgiveness isn't passive. It requires an active, excruciating choice. The test of forgiveness isn't maintaining your calm when the sea is flat. The test is the agonizing choice to maintain your center when the architect of your suffering is sleeping in the bunk next to you.
Man, and that test culminates in the tunnel.
The supreme philosophical climax.
A fortnight passes. Aksionov cannot sleep. One night, he sees earth rolling from under a sleeping shelf. Makar creeps out, terrified, admitting he's digging a tunnel and hiding the dirt in his high boots.
It's caught red-handed.
Makar promises to take Aksionov with him, but then threatens to kill him if he snitches. And Aksionov pulls his hand away and says, "You killed me long ago. As to telling of you, I may do so or not, as God shall direct."
Notice the inversion of power here.
Yeah.
Makar, the arrogant, strong killer, is reduced to a panicked animal, offering bribes and threats. Aksionov, the frail, white-haired victim, now holds absolute authority over Makar's existence.
The next day, the guards spot the dirt. The tunnel is found. The governor arrives to question everyone.
The interrogation.
Right. The entire prison operates under a strict code of silence because they know the governor will flog Makar nearly to death if he is exposed, so the prisoners say nothing. Then the governor turns specifically to Aksionov, knowing him to be just, and demands, "Tell me before God who dug the hole."
The ultimate dilemma.
This is paralyzing. Aksionov is trembling. His internal monologue is essentially a war between human justice and divine surrender. He thinks, why should I screen him who ruined my life? Let him pay.
The mathematical equilibrium you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. But then the counterthought arises. He considers that he might be suspecting Makar wrongly and that seeing Makar flogged wouldn't bring him any true peace.
Right.
So what does this all mean? Aksionov answers, I cannot say, Your Honor. It is not God's will that I should tell. Do what you like with me. Is Aksionov being a coward here, fearing Makar's threat? Or is this the ultimate display of free will?
It is the pinnacle of moral agency. We must analyze the dynamics of the governor's request.
Okay.
The governor represents the absolute peak of the human justice hierarchy in that camp. When he says, "Tell me before God," he is attempting to co-opt divine authority to enforce a penal code.
Oh, that's interesting.
He is asking Aksionov to participate in the machinery of state violence.
And if Aksionov speaks Makar's name, he gets his revenge. He uses the state as his weapon. He achieves that retribution.
Exactly. But let's trace the logic. If Aksionov turns Makar in, he validates the very system of violent human judgment that destroyed his own life.
He'd be saying the system works.
He would essentially be saying the system was wrong when it flogged me, but it is right to flog you. He would become a participant in the brutality.
By remaining silent, he steps entirely outside the human justice system.
He breaks the cycle of retribution by saying it is not God's will. He asserts that ultimate justice does not reside in the swing of a knout. He relinquishes the right to punish. The governor can lock his body away, but the governor cannot force his soul to become an instrument of vengeance. Aksionov exercises his ultimate moral agency, proving that true freedom is an internal state, completely untouched by governors or prison walls.
It is a staggering display of internal sovereignty, and this incomprehensible act of mercy completely breaks Makar.
It shatters him.
That night, Makar sneaks to Aksionov's bed. He whispers a full confession. He says, "It was I who killed the merchant and hid the knife among your things. I meant to kill you too, but I heard a noise outside, so I hid the knife in your bag and escaped out of the window."
The truth finally spoken aloud.
Makar slides to the floor, weeping, beating his head, and begging for forgiveness. He cries, "When they flogged me with the note, it was not so hard to bear as it is to see you now, yet you had pity on me."
The physical punishment was nothing compared to the weight of grace.
Makar promises to confess to the authorities so Aksionov can go home. He's offering the ultimate earthly prize, right? Exoneration. The release paper.
But Aksionov points out the biological impossibility of restitution.
Yeah, he responds, "Where can I go to now? My wife is dead and my children have forgotten me. I have nowhere to go."
You cannot rewind time. The 26 years are gone. Exoneration is just a piece of paper. It doesn't resurrect Anya.
The human justice system, even when it attempts to correct itself, is entirely impotent in the face of the spiritual damage it causes.
A confession cannot fix what Makar has broken. Makar realizes this, and the sheer weight of that realization is what crushes him.
And here is the profound transmutation of the story. Hearing Makar sob, Aksionov begins to weep too. The anger vanishes. He looks at Makar and utters the most challenging, devastating line in the text.
God will forgive you. Maybe I am 100 times worse than you.
The text states that suddenly his heart grew light. All longing for home vanished. He no longer desired to leave the prison, hoping only for his last hour to come. Makar eventually confesses to the authorities, but when the release order arrives, Aksionov is already dead.
The conclusion of the laboratory experiment.
I have to lay my cards on the table. When you read this with a modern sensibility, this ending feels brutal. It feels so unfair.
It feels like a tragedy.
It feels like the ultimate cosmic joke. He finally gets the truth out, the state prepares to acknowledge his innocence, and he drops dead before he can walk out the gate. It's like winning the lottery the day after you die.
It feels tragic because our modern sensibility is tethered exclusively to the material world. We are conditioned to worship vindication.
We want the happy ending.
But to understand Tolstoy, And to understand the philosophical architecture of this narrative, you must completely reframe that ending for the listener. This isn't a tragic ending, it's a transcendent one.
Defend that. How is dying in a Siberian labor camp a transcendent victory?
We must unpack that final sentence. Maybe I am 100 times worse than you.
Okay.
Think about the sheer ego annihilation required to say that to your tormentor. For 26 years, Aksionov's identity, even his saintly monastic identity, was subtly built on the foundation of being the innocent victim.
He was the unjustly persecuted man, the moral high ground.
Exactly. But in that moment, watching Makar's utter brokenness, Aksionov recognizes his own capacity for darkness. He remembers the suicidal fury, the intense desire for murderous vengeance he felt just days prior.
Right.
He realizes that the line dividing the saint and the murderer is terrifyingly thin. By saying he might be worse, he completely levels the moral playing field. He sheds the last, heaviest earthly burden of all, which is his victimhood.
He steps out of the dichotomy of wronged and wrongdoer.
Precisely. This is the ultimate philosophical realization of universal guilt and empathy. He realizes that in the scope of Al-Haq, the ultimate divine reality, we are all flawed, we are all carrying profound darkness, and we all require infinite mercy.
Wow.
And this brings us back to the meaning of the title. God sees the truth, but waits. We spend the entire story assuming the waiting refers to the timeline of justice.
That God was waiting for Makar to be caught.
Or waiting for the truth of the murder to be exposed to the governor.
Like God was just waiting for the paperwork to clear.
Exactly. Which is a very human projection onto the divine. The deeper philosophical interpretation is that God was not waiting for the human justice system to correct its ledger. God was waiting for Aksionov's soul to reach absolute perfection. The moment Aksionov genuinely forgives Makar, the moment he sheds his ego and recognizes universal guilt, his earthly purpose is complete.
So the release paper from the earthly authorities is entirely irrelevant now.
Completely irrelevant. If Aksionov had walked out of the prison, he would have been walking back into the illusion of the material world.
Yeah.
A world of shops and profits and conditional human relationships that he has entirely outgrown. Death, in this context, is his true liberation, not the governor's pardon. He is already free.
The physical walls literally ceased to exist for him the moment he spoke that forgiveness. He doesn't need to go back to Vladimir because a Vladimir he knew doesn't exist, and the man he is now operates on a plane that human geography cannot map.
Exactly.
If we pull all of this together, the implications for how we live right now are incredibly destabilizing.
They really are.
We live in a world obsessed with immediate vindication. We want our enemies publicly humiliated. We see it constantly, the desire to cancel people, to demand instant justice.
We demand that the X-ray machine display the broken bone so we can point at it and prove our righteousness.
Yes. We cling fiercely to the illusion that enforcing human justice will somehow heal our internal spiritual wounds.
We believe that punishing the transgressor fixes the transgression.
And Aksionov's story forces you to ask some really hard questions. How much of your own peace are you actively destroying by holding on to the right to be right? How much energy are you spending maintaining the architecture of your own victimhood?
It's a devastating critique of our deepest protective instincts.
Aksionov demonstrates that holding on to vengeance, even entirely justified rational vengeance, is effectively choosing to lock yourself inside a cell with your enemy.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a final question to mull over, a scenario that pushes this philosophy to its absolute limit.
Go for it.
Tolstoy implies that total freedom requires the total surrender of our desire for earthly justice. But place yourself in that tunnel with Aksionov. If you were holding the absolute key to your own enemy's destruction,
Oh, man.
if you could speak a single word and watch the machinery of the state crush the person who destroyed your life, could you leave the door locked and walk away? Is true justice something we enforce upon the world, or is it something we must eventually, agonizingly, learn to transcend?
That is a question that requires a lifetime of auditing to answer. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the material today. Keep questioning the structures you trust and keep seeking the deeper truths. We'll catch you next time.